Call the meeting to order. And do roll call, and let's start on my left today.
Will Rushing. Hillsborough citizen.
Ramaggio with the city of Tampa.
Diego Guerra, staff to the River Board.
Avery Smith, Governor Pearson. Alana Todd, with Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council.
Joe Gross, Hillsborough County Code Enforcement.
Everett Meyer, Temple Terrace staff.
Joel Brown, city of Tampa citizen.
And Jackie Jillian, Portland Bay. Thank you all. All right, let's stand and do the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I forgot to ask, but it doesn't look like anybody else is online. Perfect. And is there any public comment? Perfect. Look at us rolling along. All right. So last week, we didn't have a quorum to do the election of officers. So this week, we will be doing the election of officers since we have a quorum today. And I believe the two positions is chair and then vice chair. All right. Do we have a nominee for vice chair? Anybody? I would like to nominate Joel because he did a fantastic job. Would you accept? I second. Would you accept?
Yes.
Is there any nays for Joel?
Can you also be the citizen rep as well? Or can you only be one seat?
That's a DA question.
Give me both.
He can be both. Okay,
Can be derived from, yeah, four.
all right.
So any nays to Joel being vice chair again? Hearing none. Congratulations, Joel. Okay, do we have any nominees for chair?
Do you nominate Jackie? Do you like being the chair?
I can be the chair again. I have a problem with that. All right, we got a first and we got a second. Okay, are there any nays to me continuing to be chair? All right, hearing none. Lucky me. All right, thank you all. And then, last week we couldn't approve the previous, meeting minutes. So we've got two to do today, November 11th, 2025 meeting minutes and February 17th, 2026 meeting minutes. I move to approve. Is there any seconded? Did anybody have any edits?
Just one edit, script of error on the February minutes. There's Joel Gross, as much as I admire him, and we have a lot in common. The L's aren't free, so I just edit, update script of error on Gross.
Joe Gross.
And I saw that I called in a few minutes into the meeting and doesn't, so.
Thank you. All right, so the approval of previous meeting summary minutes with one correction for February 17, 2026. Joe Gross versus Joel Gross. All right, and then we have a presentation today from Swift Mud for our hydrologic update.
Can they hear me online?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Amber Smith, Government Affairs for the Water Management District, also known as Swift Mud. And I represent Hillsborough, Pinellas, Pasco counties, as well as the 33 cities in those areas. So definitely a bit of a road warrior, and happy to sit with you all, give you a little bit of an update. And certainly if anybody would like to add any addendums, especially our vice chair, as we move through this, happy to give you a little bit of an update today on where we are with the different status of our water systems, including the phase 2 water shortage order we're currently in, and what the future might hold in the next few weeks as well. And so just kind of moving through again, for those that may be watching online as well. So we are the Southwest Florida Water Management District, which really covers West Central Florida. We have other water management districts around the state. We are not a state agency. We are a dotted line to DEP, but we are a special district, a regional government authority governed by a governing board. We have an executive director, and we're all run a little bit differently. But we receive ad valorem taxes for the most part as the way we run. So we govern all or part of 16 counties. And that includes 10,000 square miles, a number of lakes, rivers, estuaries, really important wetlands. Our mission has expanded over the years. I know when I've talked to you previously, I did really hone in on our early days. And so today we're going to be focusing mostly on water supply. It's one of our core mission areas. So we did initially form post-Hurricane Donna in 1960. And so you'll recognize this from the bypass canals that you go over mostly, that's where most people know us from when you go over 301 or 75. We also have other ones as well. So as a part of water supply, you have regional water supply planning, alternative water supplies, or sometimes called AWS, reclaimed water and conservation. We'll touch on some of these. That's the focus. And our watershed management program has been of great focus recently, especially post-hurricane, and then planning in future floodplain management and future emergency management. You can all see our floodplain map viewer for free through the ArcGIS link online. And when you look at that, you'll see it looks like this. And so the blue would be the FEMA flood areas, and the yellow would be the flood areas that the local governments have mapped. And sometimes we assist with, but you can see this online. This is also free to constituents to be able to use. Yeah.
Can you say the other areas of places that the local governments have mapped, like that, like through their vulnerability assessments they've mapped those?
Through floodplain mapping. There are some areas that aren't mapped still, but most are actually updating their maps to be more accurate. So you can see the watersheds. Here's some examples of the watersheds that they've mapped in the area. There is like a segment of Pinellas more specifically, like Clearwater, Bel Air, you know, parts of those areas haven't been mapped as far as my area.
These are the certified FEMA maps, correct?
No.
Yeah.
So FEMA is a different, would be the blue. That's a different section you can find. It's up to the local government to send these updated floodplain maps up to FEMA to better inform the FEMA maps. Sometimes that's done, sometimes that's not. In the cases where it was not done, you know, many of the residents didn't realize they were in the yellow floodplain area, and they didn't realize they were going to flood during the last hurricane because the FEMA maps did not say that. So that's the downside. The upside is they wouldn't be required to pay flood insurance. So moving on, it's really feast or famine, right? So we had a lot of rain, now we have the lack of rain. And so this was really the cumulative rainfall distribution. This comes out once a month. And so yellow, this is post, right before we got the hurricane, we were in the water shortage order, and we were actually very dry, as you can see here, with yellow being average, orange being below average, red being very dry or very below average. So leading into that hurricane season, you can see the red in the typically dry season, but it was extra dry. And so we did initiate that modified phase 1 water shortage restriction at that time. This is right before the hurricane. And you can see, we were having meetings with residents. This is the Keystone area. You can see that this is where the rainfall was. And of course, the lake levels with that were below normal. As a part of that, Tampa Bay Water does watch these levels. They reduce their pumping. So this is a question we get for those that live around lakes frequently. And then we got the hurricane. And so that brought in a lot of extra water for the area. And that's really what we have been using since 2024. And you can see again that dip that we had right before the hurricanes. And then you can see the effect of the 3 hurricanes. This is the Hillsborough River at Ballard near Temple Terrace. And so you can see Debbie, Helene, a little monsoon in between, and then Milton. The effect afterwards on the Hillsborough River, you saw it level off and go down. It's very dry. And then it dipped down quite a bit last summer. And then you also had, this is the rainfall distribution for that hurricane time. This is more specifically for one day during Hurricane Milton. You had the Withlacoochee River water came in. And then you saw the before effect of where we were in that water shortage order after the hurricane. You saw the Tampa Bay lakes go up. The Alafire River right at the top there. The Hillsborough River topping out as well near Zephyr Hills near 100%. And this is the rainfall distribution for a 17-day time period in October at that time. The aquifer level for the week of October 23rd was 93% full in the central aquifer area, which includes Hillsborough, Pasco, Pinellas, and Polk counties. So we did at that time rescind the water shortage order. Immediately following that, it became very dry. So you can see here is the 2025 rainfall chart, and you can see for that time period, you can see it getting more and more dry. And then we went all the way through 2025. So here we are in 2025 September, very dry. And you can see the contrast in that dip where after the hurricane, the Hillsborough River, Zephyr Hills topping off near 100%. And then you can see it dipping down here. The Alafia at Lithia. And then we're starting to where we're getting now, March 11th, the aquifer was 30% full. But you can see last year we were at 65% full. Now you can also see the previous week we are at 29% for the aquifer level. This actually has been rising the last few weeks. And so the combination of water conservation as well as the little rain showers we've been getting have been making a difference. And I would expect on Friday when we receive this report at the end of the week, for that aquifer level to continue to go up. However, overall, we are still in need of rain. So you can see for 2026, the historic average January through March is 8.54 inches. We're at 2.99. For March, the average water rainfall, 3.32 inches. We're at 0.64. And you can see looking back to 2025. So again, we're in that deficit currently, but then looking back at 2025, the average is for the year 52.51 inches, and we were at 41 inches. So we're still, even with the rain we've been receiving, we're considerably below average. The lake levels are below the average. And then the rainfall distribution through January. So previously you saw the slide as well, the contrast for that first phase 1 modified water shortage order we were in before the hurricanes. It was largely mostly affecting the Tampa Bay area. And then you can see this one, it's actually really affecting the entire district, West Central Florida. So that's why we did declare this time the phase 1 as well as the current phase 2 we're in for the entire water management district. So currently, February 8th, we went into the phase 2 water shortage restriction. At that time, we had a 13.6-inch rainfall deficit. And so everybody is coming together to figure out ways, municipalities, counties, citizens, organizations, community groups, interested parties, to figure out how do we come together to be most efficient in our water use. As a part of that, a big part of that is lawn watering. So about 50% of the drinking water we have in the area, the use is going to lawn watering. So that really is the largest way that you can have make the biggest difference in reducing that water usage in a really meaningful way that affects our water supply. And so as such, we did reduce the lawn watering times and days, of which Joe is a big part of that in Hillsborough County for enforcing that, him and his team. So we have 1 day a week, and then we also have reduced hours. So phase 1, you start out with hours. Phase 2, you have even reduced hours, and you can see the lawn watering times here. And we are next week going to be bringing before our governing board a recommendation that we move to a phase 3 water shortage order, where those watering times will again be reduced. So that's going to be up to our governing board to see if that's approved or if they have any changes, but that is our recommendation at this time. Yeah.
How do you guys enforce this? I'd like to learn more about that.
Good question. So we actually don't enforce this. It's up to the local governments, since it's they're the utility to enforce this. I'm sure Joe can give you a really good primer because he's actually been shout out an extremely big help to some of our smaller municipalities who've had trouble enforcing this. And he's been a mentor to them on how to do it. And so it would probably be a great addendum to hear from him at the end of this. To give a little bit more insight as to how he's doing it, what's effective. And we do have information on our website as well, information about new lawns and plants. Of course, you can still have a watering period for that. However, it's not recommended to do that at this time, but it is allowable. So that's one question we get. Another question we get, HOAs cannot force you during this water shortage order to put in new grass until that has been rescinded. So that's another one. And this is the graphic illustration of that phase 2 water shortage order 1 day a week. And why are we doing this? Is it effective? Just want to give you a little bit of that background. So of course, we go through cycles here in Florida with our water and receiving a lot of water, receiving too much water, a little water. And we did have the water wars in the 80s and 90s. And this is really a part of why Tampa Bay Water was formed, as well as how SWIFMUD, the Water Management District, got involved with assisting Tampa Bay Water in that management. We actually, when we had a drought during this time period, and you had all of these counties and cities fighting with each other over this use of water, and then you had drought periods, we declared a Northern Tampa Bay Water Use Caution Area, or also called a WACA. And then we have a Southern WACA as well. And then walking through that, what does that mean? And this is why we have these restrictions in place to avoid going back to this. So we created a recovery plan. And this is the effect before and after. And so these watering restrictions, these conservation efforts do make a difference. You can see spring 2002 versus December 2019. And we actually, a couple years ago, were able to declare this Northern WACA area to actually be recovered. Cypress Creek before and after. And then Mud Lake near Starkey before and after. So the effect of that with those alternative water supplies, as well as the recovery plans, efforts, conservation efforts, made a meaningful difference. That orange line is the population that continues to increase. However, we've been able to utilize those efforts and technology to be efficient and keep steady the water use in the area. So we had the reductions through permitting, alternative water supplies, and then the minimum flows and levels in that northern pocket. And so this is getting to a big part of why we're still in okay shape for where we are, given the rainfall distribution graphs that you saw. The desal plant is back online, and that's putting out maybe about 12, 13 million gallons a day right now. And they're trying to increase that. It has some new infrastructure that's been put in. The Bill Young Reservoir has been a critical part of basically the water savings bank for our area. However, that has been reduced. We did allow, while the Alafai River was high, we did allow Tampa Bay Water to take additional water from the Alafai River to put into the Bill Young Reservoir when it was in that higher stage. That's not able to be done at this time. And so we're kind of living off that savings that's still in there. So it's in about the 6 billion gallon range. And then the surface water treatment plant, which Tampa Bay Water is also expanding. So we've committed a considerable amount of funds toward Tampa Bay Water, which benefits you all and your counties and municipalities toward those alternative water supplies and expanding that. And it's about $500 million moving forward. So again, we do still have that southern water use caution area in effect, which includes parts of Hillsborough County. And we are planning for future water use with the population increase you can see here. And so again, coming all together with the conservation efforts that everyone has a part in can make a meaningful difference. Just going to put in a little plug for this before we end and have questions and discussions. So this is hotspot areas that tend to overwater with their lawn. So after the last water shortage order, the city of Tampa decided to make permanent year-round 1 day a week watering. I live in an HOA area in New Tampa. We're still able to have green, lush grass during the spring, summer, fall months, even on that 1 day a week. I know this is something Hillsborough County has talked about and is possibly exploring, but for those that are concerned, those residents that are concerned about being able to keep a lawn on that 1 day a week watering, it is possible.
Does this restriction also apply to private wells?
Yes. Yep. One of the questions I've gotten recently deals with ag and farmers and their use. So it did for one night or for when the temperature drops to freezing and below will be a high use, but the aquifer recovers typically pretty quickly after that, within 48 hours. And that is something we found. But after the freeze we had initially during that 2011 time period, we put a considerable amount of money to helping our ag partners be able to have additional pond storage or water storage that can be used during that time. And that does offset only using the aquifer at those times. So we've done 242 projects for the large farmers on that, about $87 million. And for the smaller farmers, 305 projects totaling more than $2 million. So that is an effort too that we've been able to see the benefit from even recently during our last very cold winter season, where we've been able to recover a lot quicker because the investments we've made with that.
On that topic, I was going to ask about the strawberry farmers with the last freeze this year. So does it seem like they were using those recovery ponds or?
Yes, yep. It's just that it requires a lot of water to cover a large portion of the area, but they were able to use less than they've used in past years. As a part of Tampa Bay Water, you also have the benefit of being a part of WaterWise, which is their grant program that we fund for them. And so this is something that you yourself can participate in, or your family members, neighbors, your companies or organizations. There's multifamily owner rebates, homeowner rebates. There's even an irrigation rebate you can now be a part of. And so again, part of keeping your grass healthy, but being very efficient with how it's watering is fixing those broken nozzles and spray heads. And that's a big part of being able to keep your grass green while using less water. So that's another example of an irrigation rebate you can receive. But just a little bit of plug of when you put in that water saving infrastructure in for those buildings, especially multifamily, can save a lot of water. So moving through here, you can see the before and the after. So this is a retrofit of toilets, shower heads, faucets in these multifamily housings. And you can see the amount of water before and after they're saving. So you're talking in the hundreds of thousands of gallons. So let's say this one was 779,000 gallons a month that was able to be saved after that retrofit. This one's 789,000 gallons a month that was able to be saved. And as such, the water bills for those residents or those business owners also go down sometimes by the tens of thousands. And so in this case, their water bill went down by $31,000 the next month. And you can see more specifically, for just switching out toilets, you had people that were able to save 25, 50, 44% on their water use. Now, as a part of new construction, one of the efforts I've been working with our elected officials and staff on is putting in ordinances relating to Florida Water Star. So you've all heard me talk about this, but this is definitely a solution to put in that water saving infrastructure in when these buildings are being built. Dade City and Zephyr Hills have adopted it. City of San Antonio looking to adopt it, as well as a number of other counties and cities are looking to adopt this. But definitely doing this when it's being built can save the consumer as well as the counties and cities a lot of money within their infrastructure and use. So this is actually from my yard, some examples of that irrigation evaluation you can have. And the irrigation evaluation is free through your cities and counties as well. And then again, fixing it, you can receive those rebates through Tampa Bay Water. And then as far as Florida Water Star, we have a number of municipalities and cities that have been able to adopt this throughout our area and throughout the state. And we've been able to save more than 1.3 billion gallons annually. So it is making a big difference more and more. So that is something as you hear about your elected officials or other staff members talk about this, wanted you to be familiar with it before it comes before you. We also have other grant programs that are available to cities and counties for water conservation. So this is some examples of Florida Water Star. And the certification that's obtained. I can walk you all through that if that's something of interest to you. We do have a lot of great resources online on our website, Water 101. And then we do also have grant programs available for water conservation outreach to cities and counties. So you can, that was just in case people had questions. I put that at the end. Any questions? Joel, any comments you want to add? Addendums?
I lived it years now.
I told Amber before the meeting, but Tampa Water Department is working on what we call in-person training courses. So if you get a water ticket, it's gonna be like defensive driving. So waive the ticket fee if you attend this in-person class. So she is working on that in the water department for ticketer people that get those, I think it's $100 into.
Yeah, and so it's up to certainly cities and counties all have different philosophies on that. And it would be great again to hear from Joe as to how that works, but Hillsborough County has great results. Some cities, City of St. Pete doesn't actually do any fines, they only do warnings. Some do a combination. And it really just depends on your residents and your area. But a big part of that, of course, what Heather's referring to is education. So a lot of people, especially new residents, or residents that have a lot going on, they're just unaware of these things or how to operate their system. So education is a big component and just bringing everybody into alignment. And if there's no questions, I'll.
I was gonna say one thing,
Yeah.
you know, it's interesting, and I don't remember exactly where it was couched, but the incentive for jurisdictions to do the enforcement, right? It was either related in the permits that they get as a public user or through, I think, cooperative funding, you know, through grants, like you want conservation, water conservation grants or other types of, you know, funding opportunities. This was something that they kind of rated you on, like how aggressive or how, you know, involved is your enforcement programs, right? Because if you're applying for conservation grants, but you're not forcing conservation, it kind of, it's just like a, you know, bailing the boat out without plugging the hole. But I remember it might be in the water use permits too, but it'd be interesting now that cooperative funding, the future of that has kind of changed. It's much more regional in nature, and, you know, the opportunities are kind of more the carrot to see more robust enforcement to improve your score for grant funding. If that's gone away and it lacks a little bit more teeth or something, it's more qualitative in the permit, if that's an opportunity, because if jurisdictions aren't enforcing it, right? I mean, the district can't be everywhere, they're relying on it, but the district doesn't have I don't believe the district had the authority to force the municipalities to do it in a very strong way.
Right.
It's kind of like they were heavily encouraging them to do so, and they're gonna be keeping an eye out for that.
Yeah.
That that's something that needs to change in terms of step by, you know, several million cuts when
Yeah.
there's no enforcement going on. I know in Simple Terrace, they would hire, during the 2009 droughts, they actually hired part-time enforcement that like drove around at night. You know, there's like, they'd work 8-hour shifts or whatever, and do those tickets, because at that point, it truly isn't about the revenue. It's about, you know, their resource in the city of Simple Terrace. I mean, they operate off wells. I don't even know if they have any
Right.
time with the regional system, but to them, it was just kind of that important because it started really affecting their operation.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point, you know, there was a city who came in for an increase in their water use permit. They did a modification, so they were coming in early. And then we looked at it and we said, well, you aren't giving out warnings or violations for your irrigation enforcement during this water shortage order. You have to work on that first, you know, as a part of your application for increasing your water use permit. So those are things we look at. And then, as I mentioned too, Joe has acted as a mentor for many other municipalities who said they were kind of, you know, flummoxed as to how we enforce this when we're a small city. And because he has worked for moderate or small cities before, he was able to mentor them for that. And it does make a big difference, you know, the smaller municipalities, you know, we only have a few people possibly working in that department, but we can see, you know, they have maybe some big leaks in their system or those kinds of things. You know, that there's a lot of room, and that municipality did come back that they found some really big water users that were inappropriately watering. And so, you know, they were very happy to find that in the end as well. And so it does have results.
We use an escalated model, which a lot of jurisdictions do. Warning first. Every time it changes, in the last 6 years, it's changed a lot. We reset the warning clock. Or to get cited again, it goes to 100, 200, 300. All hands on deck when we get into a situation where we are now. So officers come in as early as 4 a.m. Which does help, not just to make you think about watering, but they're also looking for the commercial vehicles that are still listening here. Other things that we might see. So that's to give you an idea. February of last year, we did about 100 cases. This last month, we did 500 cases. Take into account situation. And we do report monthly to the district what our activity is. And
Right.
we have a water conservation hotline, so residents and recently HOAs will notify us if they see something that's irregular or because there's so much education right now, people are being attentive. And the other thing is, I've heard waste mentioned a couple of times. So we, probably about 3 years ago, we started being on the lookout and cognizant of other potential waste things like backflow preventers. If you can the backflow, it's designed to protect the public supply. A lot of times, if they're not being maintained, they leak quite a bit of water. So we use this, we use it under wasteful and inefficient use of water. We apply the same escalated process. We've been able to get lots of backflow repairs. And in fact, the utilities department is moving forward an ordinance to have us as the primary enforcers of that because it's just a better system. Sending out letters and saying we need to get certain. So that's what we're doing. We have a great relationship with the extension service. So if someone writes and says, I can't figure out how to use my timer, we get power surges and all these kind of things. On an appeal, we will refer them over to the extension service. Either they contact them within 30 days, but usually waive that citation. That's been quite some weird. It's got a lot of accolades. That's how we do it. There's lots of ways to do it. Do take it seriously. Thank you to the district for your support. Thank you.
Yes. Do you go like, because it seems like, one, there's the watering on specific days, and then also people who are just watering multiple times. So you go see if they're watering on a day they shouldn't be, or if you're trying to see if they're watering multiple days, do you like note that this house is watering this day, and then you follow back up another day to see if they're watering numerous times a week?
So right now, I'm an officer and see water level stop to see when it's the right thing. And if it isn't the right time. And yes, I know to go by. I see it. The other thing is amazing. Once you kind of get your mind around it, you can drive almost any given day run into the middle of the day. Because again, these aren't people necessarily intentionally acting. They're relying on technology. We all know from our Bluetooth experiences that technology is not always perfect. Or there's user error. So getting them the assistance they need.
Curious, is there any kind of prohibition to water when it's raining? Because I see that a lot. People have their sprinklers on, it's raining outside. Is there, is that in the,
You can't do that.
it's in your ordinance? I don't know if it's in Tampa.
I mean, the bigger thing is, by Florida law, you're supposed to have rain sensors on there. And so, now for many, like, again, for our house, when we had that irrigation evaluation by a private contractor, they found, it was 30 years old, right? It was dried out, wasn't even connected to the irrigation system. So that's super common in people's yards. So yes, required by law, but when was it put in? Has it been changed? Oftentimes they're made of wood, right? And so, with the sun, wind, Florida, it dries out or becomes ineffective. So switching that out can make a difference with that. I think probably the biggest thing we've done that makes a difference, and again, through Tampa Bay Water, you can receive rebates for, is putting in a smart irrigation controller. And through UF research, they have found that when people put those in, you do save about 30 to 50% because it's an app. And it makes it so easy to see, how long are you watering? Are you watering wrong? You can skip a week when it's raining. And so that's where you get the really big savings because each lawn irrigation cycle, you're using about 2,000 gallons of water. So nothing you do, like no matter how many dishwashers, laundry, teeth brushing, like nothing you do is gonna compare to the amount of water, you know, that is in your lawn cycle. So that's where we get a lot of that water savings, and if you put in that technology that's available, it does show that you can save a lot of money with that.
I have a smart watering device and it connects to local weather stations. So
Yeah.
homeowners that have their own little weather vane, it connects to that.
Mm.
And then it automatically cuts off water a day before it's gonna rain. Like, hey, there's gonna be rain predicted over a certain percentage, or not percentage, a certain amount. It just stopped. It just cancels that watering day altogether and goes to the next week. It's pretty neat.
The biggest savings on the commercial side, because we talk about our lots and it's Florida, right? So it'd be raining over here, but not over there. But if it rains at your house, it probably rains on most, if not all the property. I know the district did a project a few years ago with Temple Terrace, called Country Club, where they bought a golf course. You know, there's parts of the course that get 1.5 inches, there's parts that might get half an inch, there's parts that will get absolutely nothing, but they generally have relied on a centralized weather station. So they did have a centralized weather, they had a weather station, but you know, what happens to the clubhouse might be vastly different than in other areas. So they're able to, identify and have more remote areas and zones. Because they're talking about tremendous amounts of water and they're using well water, but, in those volumes, just the energy costs and, the equipment and labor and everything is just, it's really, they want to have washouts and stuff too. So to a point, it's a requirement now to have soil moisture, soil moisture sensor. If you're really sophisticated, that's kind of getting, but most of them have the cork or the foam cup that goes on your gutter, and most of them, they break and they fall apart or they don't, but, it certain, depends on where you live. I mean, the cost is really, the opportunity is on you. If you live in the city of Tampa, you're, probably using potable water in it, with a tiered rate structure, 2 or 3 additional waterings a month that are unnecessary, it's going to be probably $150. If you're on reclaimed water or you're in a part of Tampa, it's a little bit less, but it just, if it takes you into those next tiers, right, over, 2000 CCF, or, if you're using the per 1,000 gallons, it really starts to hit you because those structures are designed for the average user, right? Now there are more and more users with irrigation pretty much everywhere now, but, turf grass adoption, like doing this astroturf isn't always the, isn't always the option. And there's, as much as we saw a wave of that coming in and not even getting into the other side effects of that, you're starting to see a lot of it come out. I can, my own experience in several neighborhoods that I have houses that, it looked great when it was put in by the realtor. And then, a couple of years later, between just the sun in many cases and just wear and tear and leaves and pollen, and just that under drain requires more maintenance than the average homeowner, should really be signing up for.
Hand watering is still allowed, so that's something I also recommend to people that are, really attached to maintenance of their lawn, and are finding it hard to maintain it in the way that they would want. So hand watering is still allowed at this time. And again, most Florida lawns, you only need a little sprinkling, so, hand watering for a couple minutes should be fine. And again, it's not using near the amount of water, that you would have in an irrigation cycle.
I will say that driving around town, I have definitely noticed that a lot of, that fake green grass have been pulled up even from a couple of the schools where they have just been put in maybe 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, but they're pulling it all up. And I've noticed a lot of the residential homes just around Hillsborough County a lot of them have been converting to more drought resistant plantings and not using the St. Augustine grass. If there is grass, using more of the Bahia type grass that is more drought resistant and more used to the heat and the different conditions of Florida. And they're more resilient. It's just a more resilient grass for this area. So that's always nice to see that that's still on the cusp of people still doing and branching out and redoing their xeriscaping, because that really is kind of the best effect of not having to water that is everything's drought resistant. And I do my part, just so y'all know, I don't water. And
I commend the city of Tampa for their new float program, the Florida Friendly Landscaping Incentive Program. At least that's what it stands for in Dallas County, but it's the same thing. They're incentivizing.
Then they do that through the extensions office as well. They'll do trainings and classes and stuff.
And we're hoping to, or my hope is, if these other cities and counties in our area adopt Florida Water Star as an ordinance, all of those things are included. So Florida Friendly Landscaping is a part of it. You can only have a maximum part of your lawn to be irrigated, which is actually in most ordinances already, but it's not enforced. And so you are seeing where that is adopted by cities, you do see a lot more use of BAHEA, unirrigated sections, especially in backyards, and more efficient watering infrastructure being put in, extended plant beds, mulch, those kinds of things. So that can be a byproduct of that ordinance as well.
Anybody else have any questions for Amber or Joe? Thank you guys so much. That was very educational. Very helpful. Next, we have our consistency recommendation for the right construction projects. And I did look at the list already, and they are all A through G are the same previous projects from the February 17th meeting that we did just kind of brief and just go over what the scope of those projects works were. Did anybody have any questions or wish to go over any of the A through G projects, scope of work, or have any questions?
I got a question. The D, the Sulphur Springs.
Yes.
So, and I don't apologize because it's just on that point. I just noticed, I know the last meeting, the guys did the presentation on the vinyl retaining wall or seawall. And I thought you guys asked some good questions about like the texture and the ability for.
Improvement plans.
That's right, yeah. And they had made the note, and I recall this, I saw it in the meeting minutes, I just happened to key in on this, so this is literally just a question, this isn't like a loaded question. They said, and you have it in the meeting minutes, they're gonna plan it with riprap.
They're gonna place
The
riprap.
place riprap, but the plan on this one has that wall, I don't see the riprap on the plan.
Correct.
So but I don't know if that's, the responsibilities to review it for consistency with the river master plan. I'm not technically savvy enough to know exactly if that, without looking at it a little more just on the spot, whether or not there's something that prohibits that or not. So that's my question. Yeah.
It's a great point,
Yeah.
great point. So I would say that it's a replacement seawall. So there is an existing seawall and it just needs to be repaired and replaced. If it was a brand new seawall, we would definitely be questioning it for the consistency factor, absolutely.
Gotcha.
But it is a replacement seawall. And what he explained, because all of us were asking about why not riprap too. He said that is a future phase that they are thinking about implementing. But at this point, it's not in the scope of work for their budget right now.
Gotcha.
But that was something that they had been thinking about doing after the wall is in place, just for extra protection as well. Did I miss anything, Michael?
Good answer.
There's nothing binding them to actually putting riprap in. They could decide in a month from now, actually, we don't want to do riprap.
Yes.
So some of us are approving this with the assumption that we'll be putting in riprap, because that's what they said they would be doing.
Yeah, I would say that, in my opinion, it was not 100% from what he was describing that they are going to put riprap in. It was a future scope of work that they were thinking about, in my opinion. Had he said, well, we have the budget for riprap for this amount, next year, then I would feel more confident that there's definitely going to be riprap placed there, but that's not what I took from his presentation.
It's also a phased approach because it is the pool. So right now it's just addressing the seawall. And they also have to address a bunch of other issues with the pool though too.
It could always be like a comment in the EPC permit, you know, regarding future shoreline stabilization. You know, recommending for graphic place. But more than that, like, as a regulatory agency, like, we can't force him to put that extra funding money toward placement of the riprap. If they don't have the funding, they don't have the funding.
Right, just like we can't really mandate materials either, like they don't use fine.
Yeah, we can always ask what alternatives, of course, you know, they passed on and why they weren't appropriate. But in this case, since it is literally a replacement seawall, the alternatives for not putting a new replacement seawall really isn't there, so to speak, and especially with the site conditions, with that pool being so close and the amount of weight on both sides, it really isn't practical to have any other structure that's more green or gray to be probably at that location for safety reasons of the
Plus, it's the city of Tampa doing the work, is that right? So
change of their
there's
property.
maybe not so much budget available. I mean, could be $50,000 worth of riprap or something like that. They maybe could move forward.
But I mean, recommendations and general statements can be put in a permit, but they can't be mandated. We can't be mandated to do that.
It's just slippery slope too, because this is not the final thing. They've been struggling with this for a while. And there's a lot of departments involved and a lot of nuance to this, and it's not the final thing, the last thing that they're doing there. I think to add more complications to it in design and, you know, would we rather than do this and then undo it in 5 years, because at that point, whatever you've recruited or established is now going to be unestablished. So I don't, it's kind of a slippery slope. I mean, I knew that the city did have more ambitious plans and talk about the boardwalk, and there's a lot going on in this area, and you have the river tower part 2, which is going to be a whole nother thing too. It'd just be a lot harder to undo even more of it, and it would look like, you know, if in 5 years they approached us with a master plan that didn't include it, I'd feel more inclined to say, we understand this to be a more master plan for whole solution, you know, not just a kind of a temporary fix, but this is almost like a kind of like a stabilization, because they still have to get over the hump of dealing with the pool and everything, and it's just that this is where it's a tighter part of the river and there's higher velocity, and you have the manatees, and I think, you know, we can put a pin in it and just know that I'm sure there'll still be many of us on the board the next time it's come back, because it will come back. That we haven't, you know, reflected. If you want to reflect in the minutes, I guess that, you know, we expect or anticipate seeing additional features the next time that it's redone, and I think that would probably be appropriate, at least.
And then, of course, Michael's team, who is doing that permit review, you know, he can also put our meeting minutes in the project file, or just make an individual meeting conversation record, or, you know, meeting discussion record, that our group is strongly recommending that any future shoreline stabilization efforts of work include riprap and or potential native plantings for future stabilization and longevity of it. Would you be willing to some sort of notes in your project file, Michael?
I can definitely add.
The whole group agrees with that, because I would add in there, like, not using vinyl, just because we know that that's not conducive to habitat there. And, you know, I get it, when some of the, you know, private, you know, property owners want to go that route, because it is more cost effective, but since this is the city of Tampa project, I feel like, and it's very highly visible shoreline, I feel like they should be following best practices. it could be a good demonstration project too. And so like not using vinyl and implementing riprap or some, nature-based like solutions. Is are appropriate, but adding that to the file, I guess it would depend on, I'd like consensus from the whole group. It's not just me saying that.
Well, I feel like a lot of our last meeting conversations and questions and discussion was specifically about this. And what alternatives might be a little bit more greener options. But is my understanding correct that the permit has been issued already?
Yeah, so for this permit, it became valid on February 10th of this year. The minor work permit did.
So you missed the vote on this one. But I would say if everybody as a group wants to make a recommendation that any upcoming City of Tampa seawall repair or replacement work projects come in for review, that the question be asked, is there a different alternative material that would be more beneficial as an option to be evaluated? Does that sound like what you're trying to say?
Sure.
Okay. Would the group, anybody who agrees that a recommendation for any future City of Tampa seawall replacement projects include more environmentally friendly material type? Raise your hand. Okay, we got 3 nays. We got the rest.
I don't know if it's a they necessarily, we just don't really have a part in that, so I guess it's more like abstaining.
Okay. Is there a majority rules here, Diego?
Sorry, I was just writing notes.
It's okay. There is 3 non-raised,
Non-voting.
non-voting.
Yeah, so it'd be the total number ayes and then total number nays and then 1 abstain.
3 abstained.
So
I
3
can't
abstain.
vote, so.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah,
I don't know.
so they don't count.
Yeah.
So their votes don't count. It's just 1 abstain.
Okay,
I think you were just trying to get a feel. Sense. You're just trying to get a feel. It's a suggestion.
yes, just a general suggestion for the next City of Tampa seawall replacement project that it's going to be under review on Hillsborough River.
But, so I think my reservation is that we kind of really broadened the statement, because it went from, hey, on this project, if this project comes back, there had been discussion about it, then it turned into any City of Tampa seawall project on the Hillsborough River. That's not, there are lots of seawalls that the city is going to be working on and has worked on. So that's kind of a case by case. I mean, because there's going to be cases where they don't even own the sovereign submerged lands, depending on, we deal with this all the time up and down by Next Star property. It's one of the ones in here where they've surrendered some of the navigable federal waterway. So now some of that's, I guess the locals have kind of encroached on management of that. But there's always private interest, and sometimes I know we looked at it at Tampa Prep a few years back, and there just isn't enough bottom. It's just, I know Ricky Federico and Dark Moss way, there's no way to even do a revet, to do the toe slope to even hold so it's not that they didn't want to, it's that it was from an engineering standpoint, it could be done, or it involved other ownership interests, of the submerged lands or the prairie, right? So it's just a very broad statement. I mean, I think I'd probably go along with what we were saying. Put a pin in it for this project, yeah.
Where the conditions are conducive. That, I don't think we're trying to mandate that they go to these
Yeah,
alternatives.
this is related to the vinyls.
Sure.
Yeah, this is really, like, if it was vinyl, I don't know that situation, but this is specifically because it was a vinyl.
Versus concrete or one of the other.
That's just not a material difference, that's a changing the entire footprint of the project, because in order to do riprap, you have to create a whole, it's not just however many mils of vinyl and riprap bags aren't just stacked.
Why do they gotta use vinyl? I'm just, it's a question, like, if
It's
you
the
don't,
pile, that's the material.
but you don't have to use vinyl. Correct?
Correct.
Use
You
metal.
don't have to. use
Right.
metal. You can use-
There can be something else
Yeah.
that maybe can be used, or could be, that can be more conducive
That's all, and I think that's what I heard you say, is like, hey, if you bring vinyl, we want you to look at something alternative. That's what I heard you say, and that's why I voted yes.
Yeah, alternative
Yeah,
material to
that's right.
vinyl.
And you were just saying to look at it.
Yeah,
Like
just
just
to
so it's
evaluate.
great, not a mandate or anything like that. I don't know, I get it.
But yes, I see your point, absolutely. If the change in the type of shoreline civilization, I did not mean changing back to.
So hypothetically, you
wall
could
to
actually put the
riprap.
riprap in front of the vinyl.
We
Right.
also have language in the master river plan that encourages
Yeah.
the use of riprap where feasible. Because like Joe was saying, there's just some places that it just isn't feasible.
Right,
One of the other things I do remember the gentleman during the brief saying is one of the reasons they're utilizing vinyl is because that living seawall material can be easily installed on it.
mhm.
So I don't know if that matters in terms of why they're installing it. If there's another material that they can attach that living seawall to.
You could do it to the concrete if it was concrete also. Okay, so I think what Alana and I are trying to say together is that in regards to shoreline stabilization where it's replacement seawall projects, has the city of Tampa looked at other material type for the wall that might be more environmentally beneficial than just the vinyl option? Just make it an evaluation, just ask, have they looked at alternatives to just the vinyl material for any future projects?
Yeah, I don't want to get too much in the weeds here, but that motion starts with the premise that the city is not doing that. Right? In this case, there are budgetary limitations, there are time limitations, there are engineering limitations. So I don't want to start from the posture of why did you choose something that wasn't environment friendly? So that's to me, it's just, and I do want to support this. I'm just being careful about how we're approaching this, right? Because first it was this project, and like, just as a reminder, when we see this again, let the record show, they discussed incorporating those elements in this project in the future. And now we're talking river wide. And so
I can ask Parks and Rec to come in and give a update. You guys can ask those questions to them.
Okay.
Like Joel said, maybe they are doing that. It just might be.
I think it's worth
time-
noting, so
time
that
constraint.
we're going on record as saying, they presented to us and they mentioned the opportunities. What was submitted for permitting did not include those opportunities, right? So just, we're notating that, right? Just so that when another permit comes in for this project, for me, this project specifically, right? Because it's too broad of a brush. I mean, to Diego's point, we have a bird board guiding principle and documents that encourage all the things that we're talking about right now. I just want to I want to be able to like bring it up to them when they submit something else that might not be consistent, right? So like, we still have that ace in our hole, but I don't want it to now be a talking point every single project that because we can always bring up whatever we want. I just don't want to hold another project accountable or hostage to something they didn't do over here, right? Because there might be, again, there's too many inputs and circumstances that are beyond their control, and I just,
Agree with you. Sure. So I feel like, EPC already agreed that they'll put some notes regarding, any next phase for the specific Sulphur Springs seawall work, shoreline stabilization work. And then if Diego, if we can maybe invite the Parks and Rec people to come back in and we can ask a little bit more detailed questions about the alternative options of seawall material type. I feel like that solved the questions and resolved our questions a lot more directly. Does that sound okay to you, Alana, with that?
Yeah, and I think just like it's more broadly,
And we can
You know,
ask them,
when they get to this point of review for any of these projects, it's like, we've already made these decisions, this is what we're putting in a permit for, right? And so how can we, as a group, make recommendations for them to consider some of these alternatives at the get-go when they're initially planning?
Right.
Because it feels like we can say it all day long when they get here, hey, you know, we would like for you to look at that, but that ship has already sailed.
Right.
So I guess what I'm interested in is like, how can we somehow make it a part of like that, the early stages or the early part of their process, so they can tell us, well, that's why we can't add riprap because it's just not feasible. You know, we've already considered these alternatives.
Right.
And this is why we can't do that. And then it's okay, we have, you guys, you know, crossed your T's and dotted your I's. You've already, you know, done your due diligence. Whereas, you know, it seems like some of these are presented, it's just like, well, this was the lowest cost option, so that's what we're doing. And we know long-term, that was a natural spring, you know, like long-term, that's probably not the most resilient option. And it's certainly not the best for any kind of habitat or nature-based.
Is that something the Regional Planning Council would advocate for, or is advocating for, and continues to, I would say, talk to the elected officials that are on all your board and make it a part of the city and the county planning? You know, but then you're starting with the elected officials and they're putting it in their own documents.
Yeah, I mean, we have some of these recommendations, like within our regional resilience action plan, like using nature-based solutions if possible, and using more resilient, you know, shoreline types, not, you know, tidal flood barriers, but we can tell them that we have presentations go in front of them, you know, but if this board is involved in this permit review and approval process, so that's kind of why I'm bringing this up, if there's any way we can.
I don't think maybe it's, so, I don't know, I don't recall if we ever had Whit River come and talk to us, but, you know, Kayla's his successor as the sustainability officer for the city of Tampa, and I'm seeing this on the tree side in my day job, where we say Parks and Rec, but not every permit we're gonna get from Parks and Rec, right? So you can have all the handshake agreements and kind of appearances from them we want, but then it's stormwater, then it's gonna be water, and then you get into the enterprise funds where they're like, this is
Public works.
right, where when you have like the sustainability office, right, they kind of have a little bit more of a, they're a lowest common denominator of influence. And we had it with trees recently, because if you're asking the pre-workshop at the mayor's neighborhood university was like the highest attended by orders of magnitude, because everyone had something to say and heard different things. But like when people say colloquially, the city is arborist, okay, well, the city has 20 arborists across 5 or 6 different departments. So are you talking to natural resources? Are you talking to right of way? You're talking to permitting? Are you talking to Parks and Rec? So, and we brought them all in the same room. We brought some, it was like kind of like a little therapy session, but it worked out well. But she's kind of, she has the ability and the mandate really to kind of make sure that that's a uniform approach and that people are not asking 4 different city employees the same question and getting 4 different answers because they're in silos, right? So I think having Kayla on board, because she can inform, she can lean in on whether it's Parks and Rec, Public Works, Storm, whatever it might be. It's just, there's a little bit more. So there, because some, again, Parks and Rec, what their mission here and what their objective truly is to get this pool back up and running. Like, this is a part of that project, a very critical and preliminary function, but beautification and habitat restoration is like, not that they're opposed to it, it's just, it's not their, but it is her thing, right? So helping kind of help steer, that's why I would think would be good to have her involved, because that way, whether it's Parks and Rec or public mobility, so on and so forth, because there could be any number of applicants from the city, having that lowest common denominator so that we can kind of convey that, or just hear what her plans are. And I know that previously there was a lot of shoreline restoration work talked about in over off Gay Bay and Old Port Tampa, and, you know, so it's something they're looking at that was more grant related, but I think there's an opportunity too when it's just, I don't want to say routine work, but work that's being done. It's restoration is not the core objective. It's kind of an opportunity with the operation and maintenance of the infrastructure they have. But it'd be good to have her, because if you have Parks and Rec come in, that's fine, but you know, the next application, it's not gonna be from Parks and Rec. I mean, we're gonna be back to square one.
Yeah, you're gonna be in mobility and transportation when you're working with the other side of the river. Because right now, we've done the east side, we're doing the west side.
Mhm.
A lot of living shorelines are going out.
Yeah.
But you're dealing with mobility, not parks and recs.
Yeah.
So you have a totally different set of engineers that are on a completely different building side of the world that don't talk to folks around us.
So what was that person's?
It's Kayla.
Kayla is our
So-
sustainability officer.
She, we used to have when,
Yeah.
Kayla was the coordinator, and so then they just appointed her the officer after he left us.
So can we have can we ask City of Tampa? Kayla, Parks and Rec, and maybe, Public Works Department Director?
I would recommend you get Carlos. Because Carlos he's working on a rebate program for permitting for green buildings. So when we had a meeting a couple weeks back, I said, does that also include green infrastructure? Because the idea is you get 100% back your permitting fees and a rebate if you put green elements in your building. And I said, but we don't just look at the building. We look at the whole site plan. So are you going to include green infrastructure as part of that rebate? He said, well, I wasn't planning on it. So please look into it. So that might be an avenue because that's a new rebate program that resiliency is to improve LEED buildings in green. But I don't think he's thought past the building.
Beyond the footprint of the building.
So I would recommend you get him to talk about his resiliency rebate program, and then maybe when that rolls out, if it includes green, then that would be an incentive for a developer.
And like I said, I want to make this clear that regional planning council is not an advocacy organization, we don't advocate on issues. But it sounds like some of these things are even included in the river plan, right?
They are.
So I guess that this board is responsible for, using that plan to make our decisions. And so, if we can institutionalize some of those recommendations within some of these processes for like permit, review or, site development or site planning. I think that's kind of.
And the river plan, so the Hillsborough River Master Plan is made up of policies from the 3 jurisdictions comprehensive plans. So those policies are also found in those jurisdictional comprehensive plans. And during the site plan review, those jurisdictions should be reviewing the comprehensive plans and those policies to ensure that they are consistent with the comprehensive plan. Right? So again, like not knowing the full picture of why they're going final, but also not knowing if they're actually looking.
We will have a presentation and we will ask some very hard questions for the city of Tampa on their nature-based solution, resiliency options, and how early these other alternatives can be thought into the overall scope of work for the projects that will be done.
Now refresh my memory when Nina came in for the river, the west side, with transportation. Was that in that, like, I can't recall if she had any elements of living shorelines. I think she did.
So,
Did we
yes,
bring this up? Or is she using vinyl? And then the zoo also is gonna be doing some redevelopment on their property, and then they're gonna take it to the river. So I don't know if they brought in their plans yet conceptually.
we saw some last year from the zoo. But it was very, very early stages of the concept plan. Like they had just finally like transferred the property ownership and everything, and figured out the uplands. So I'm sure that they're gonna be coming back, but it was a very, very preliminary concept plan that we did look at for the zoo expansion. On the river, and then for the West River Walk, EPC did the minor work permit for 3 segments of
Right.
living shorelines. And then those segments of the living shorelines were abutting or adjacent or nearby the 3 new tile supported walkways for the West River Walk. So they're all going to be intertwined, the living shorelines and these new 3 pedestrian walkways on the west side of the river, on the south end. But the river walk is solely 3 pedestrian over water pile supported walkways. It's got nothing to do with anything on the face of the wall. Any other questions or comments?
I got one last thing, just like, I'm not trying to, I'm just curious. And I don't know who reviews with Hillsborough County on the EPC permit. That individual or whatever. But if there's a plan, there's a master plan. And whether it's gone or gone, gone through or not, but like, just looking at the plan. The number one goal 6 is cleaner, safer, more attractive, protect natural ecological functions, support plant animal wild. That's like the main statement. I'm just curious on, my sense is whoever reviews this at Hillsborough County has this and they make comments, and those comments may not get into this. I don't see it in here, but would there be like, is there a code? Is this the code that they review it under? I'm just curious on when these things get approved. This is in the plan. We're responsible for seeing if something's consistent with the plan. But does that individual, technically that's where regardless of any board or whatever, to me, that individual who reviews that would be checking it versus the plan. Is that plan like a code that they, like for me, like when I'm in the construction business, so like it's always building code and we get raked on everything under the sun. There's code though, and there's supporting information, and that reviewer would have supporting information, or when they submit it, that's, to me, is this plan like code for projects in the river? And if so, maybe there was a waiver, maybe there was a conversation, maybe there was some other circumstance. That's another question there, is just when these people review these permits, what is the code? Like, is this part of that review, or is this just a supplemental document?
For the minor work permit reviews, when they come through our office, there is no county agency that we send it to for review. EPC just does the review under the rules for our agency, under the rules for the port, the Army Corps, and DEP. And if we were looking at a property on the Hillsborough River, I believe we'd be looking at the policies within the Hillsborough River Master Plan, applying those and making sure, because I do believe that it's a part of Port Tampa Bay's submerging management rules that a project should meet the comprehensive plans. And so we would be looking at the policies within this to make sure that it's abiding by those.
And I couldn't tell you if that's abiding or not. I'm not suggesting it's not. I'm just kind of trying to understand the process, just so I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as far as materials, there is nothing in code that says you can or cannot use vinyl, you can or cannot use this material.
Right.
They don't address that detail.
Yeah.
Just material. It's just stabilization. It's not about,
Stabilizing the shoreline, just,
yeah.
I thought when they brought that up last month, I was in myself, I was like, oh, that's a really good question. Like, your water's gonna flow real fast through there, nothing's gonna grab anything's that. So that's why I was curious.
So the Port Authority rules, the submerged lines management rules do have comments, review criteria and general management standards. And in our rules, we do ask what alternatives could be used that are more environmentally friendly, so to speak, before new seawalls or replacement seawalls are an option as the evaluation for shoreline stabilization for a site. And so we have why can't plantings work? Why can't riprap work? And then, and then after that, replacement seawall and then new seawall are the next level options. EPC chapter 1-11 and basis of review, they do have also review criteria where applicants and agents are supposed to be looking at alternatives, and that the environmental reviewer is supposed to be asking for what alternatives have you already evaluated, which ones, what reasons were they not applicable for the site per se? Or why didn't you move forward with those alternatives for any other reasons? So there is some
There's a
flexibility.
process there.
It
Yeah.
isn't, it is a process, but it truly is up to the reviewer and like the manager of that section to make sure that the reviewing staff is asking those questions. So I always trained everybody and I was trained to ask those questions. But do they get missed sometimes? Sure,
Yeah, good.
everybody's human, but, she is absolutely 100% correct. Nowhere that I recall in the port rules and nowhere in the EPC rules do I recall seeing a specific requirement or looking at the material alternative. So it really is how well staff is trained on seeing these projects in place and in the ground, and just knowing when to ask those questions, when it's appropriate to ask those questions. But again, for the Sulphur Springs specific site, it was already a hardened seawall.
Yeah.
So maybe alternatives to the specific vinyl material type maybe didn't enter that reviewer's mind at the time because it's still kind of a new approach and new materials are being made now that are a little bit more nature-based, for the pH balance, the texture on the concrete seawalls and that kind of thing. So it's also knowing what new materials and science is out there for accomplishing this type of work on the water. Also, it's same thing with the building.
Yeah, I'm good.
Same thing with the building. You
Yeah.
got to keep up on all of the new.
They
not only
keep up, they
code, but
keep up. That's-
Materials
see,
and everything.
and trust me, they keep up.
But it's a great question. It's a great question. And, you know, us reviewers, myself included, you know, sometimes we need to be reminded that, hey, this stuff is not only in the comprehensive plans, not only in the river board, you know, rules, but also in our own agency rules. And we need to sometimes be reminded, although it's an uncomfortable question, sometimes we're supposed to be asking those questions.
I think it's like for citizen appointees too, you know, presumably there's nothing that we're reviewing in the consolidated plan that isn't already being reviewed by professional staff because they're kind of bound by the same guidelines. But we do represent an amalgam of like the confluence of all those plans. So it's our consolidated plans, literally the counties and the two cities all like smushed together and that's sewn up, right? So there's going to be some inconsistencies that are inherent. There's some similarities, right? And it's not that we're here to be a, you know, an auditor of whether or not the professional staff, you know, notated any inconsistency with companies. I can sit here with the city of Tampa one right now and say, there's a case to be made for that, right? But there's always caveats, right? You know, when it talks about prohibiting the construction of new seawalls along the upper Hillsborough River, and then in the lower and middle, only allowing them to be reconstructed when it's found to be in the overriding public interest. So, you know, it's good for us to be familiarized with ourselves with this, because sometimes I feel like we do kind of rubber stamp these a little bit, and it can seem a little bit, you know, a little juxtaposed that like 1 month we'll get a presentation about some new innovative way to encourage shoreline restoration and to attack a tough habitat, you know, preservation project and whatnot. And the next month it's like, oh, all we have is the vinyl seawall. It is what it is, right? So, you know, it's good to have that conversation, kind of refresh ourselves on what's here. And there is a difference, you know, between what we can look for, obligate, and impose on the private citizens versus what we expect from the member governments that are the ones creating the policies. I mean, it's different when it's a homeowner that's trying to do a vinyl seawall. Says, I don't have any guiding principles, policies, or objectives. Like, I'm just trying to replace my seawall, right? So we're kind of here to help steer that, just make sure we're not veering too far off, and just kind of reminding. But I do think having Kayla or whoever else from the city that, you know, kind of has a broader scope of these objectives and environmental sections of their overall comp plan can be helpful to, you know, remind them. You know, I don't want to tag on too many caveats, and, you know, an objection or a finding of inconsistency doesn't mean that it's a bad project, does not mean that it's not going to doesn't pass legal regulatory muster. It just means, you know, we're not really holding ourselves to the same, to the, I don't want to say that it's not the rules, the aspirations and the goals, because that's what they are. At the end of the day, they're goals. You know, we're supposed to be trending that way when possible, not, making it hard and fast, because it was hard and fast regulation, we wouldn't have to talk about it. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Is there any other questions about any of these other marine construction projects, A through G? Hearing none, then can we have a consistency recommendation?
Move to find law consistent.
Wonderful, got one. Can we have a second? Wonderful. Are there any nays on consistency? Okay, hearing none, we find A through G projects listed consistent. Last thing on our agenda is other business. Alana.
So I've seen some articles in the news about the river being dyed green and people concerned with the water quality impacts of that. I felt like that was a pretty relevant topic for this group. I don't know if we've had someone come in and talk about, not that I recall.
We get complaints.
Huh?
We get consistent complaints about that.
It might be nice to have someone come in and talk to us about the materials they're using. And like,
Especially that
why-
dye that we use for troubleshooting our pipes for leaks, and it happens on a daily, you just don't see it. That is the typical dye that's used to detect leaks in sanitary, storm, potable.
That's on a much smaller scale than the. entire
So
river.
a very short window of a concentration is not it's going to prohibit photosynthesis, but not at a detriment to the environment that we've seen. In other words, it's a short window and then it's pushed out. So it's not as though it's blocking growth for a long time period. I mean, we have days where we don't see the sun and the plants still make it. So,
Yeah. And I appreciate, your comments, I guess, just our due diligence. I think it would be an appropriate agenda item for this group to have like a professional come in and just talk about what those materials are, what the potential, because not only is it blocking photosynthesis, but imagine if something dies, and I mean, how do they impact the wildlife besides just light attenuation, right?
I recommend you get the water department because they're the ones that do it.
Yeah, I
The guy who
don't
does it.
recall us ever actually having any presentation about the river being dyed green.
I
So
think
I
it's
think that's
appropriate for us to respond to like,
I definitely do.
citizen,
I've got some random calls as well,
Concerns.
and I have simply said it's a non-toxic dye,
It is, it's,
but that's as much as my knowledge is.
Yeah,
I think we actually, I want to say, at the train station, I want to say, maybe John Ring came in and talked about it. And the concern that we had, and I think it was specifically Doc Brown, that it's how they distribute it, like, so they have to pick the right tides, right? Because sometimes the tide's coming in, sometimes going out, and that's affected actually the time of it as well. And earlier in the week, they do a demonstration with it to kind of see what the mixing will look like. And the concern was, okay, I think we got over the hump to the MSDS of like the non-toxic nature of the material, but it was like, how long will it linger? Because it depends year in, year out. If you have a huge rain and the tide's going out, the event's not even over and it's all gone. It's gone to tide, literally. There have been other years where it kind of lingers because it's the tide's coming in and then there's no flow of the dam, and it's kind of, maybe you will see it on Sunday a little bit, right? So I think that was more of like, what was the decision-making process? And the city does have one about, are they going upstream or downstream? Are they gonna move this from 11 o'clock to 12? Or are they gonna try to pick up slack?
that's for the SOP.
It'd be interesting to hear like this, the city's, the approach to it, because it's evolved over time. It's not the same as it was 8-9 years ago when they first just went out there, because now they used to just pour it's an orange powder and it got all over the place. It looked like Oompa Loompas. Then they created a slurry. And it's like little Boston, this Carolina skip, and now they like put it in as a slurry. And then they have the fire boats, and it's an evolution. So it'd be kind of interesting to know, I think, just how the city has evolved
Yeah.
their operation of this to minimize the impact, because they're certainly trying to minimize the impact. They don't want it to languish there for days, right? They also don't want it to just dump it in and make it the upper river problem. It's just it's a lot of lessons learned, because it was something that was kind of done on the fly, because doing it in Chicago is vastly different than doing it here. And it just depends on our water flow too. When the rivers, we have low rainfall, the tannins are up. It's a different animal. Yeah, I think it's good to,
So it's not dry Gatorade mix.
So I think having some
Yeah.
city staff seems appropriate, but I would also encourage us to maybe get like a scientist or researcher in here to actually talk about it. Because I don't want city staff to be like, yeah, it's fine, you know, we heard it's great, like it's not, you know, impacting, you know, wildlife. I actually want like a scientist to come in and tell us, well, based on these materials you're using, if it does linger this long, like this could be the impacts, or if it goes out, I don't know. I just think we have both
Yeah.
representatives come in and then we can say, all right, we did our task to the, you know, to the public.
Agreed time.
That's it.
I guess that would be part of the question for the city of Tampa, like as this has evolved, have they included MSF or anybody on that?
Right.
About how they go about doing this
Yeah.
annual event. Just ask them
Is
to
that-
present
Another
how they
presentation that we
SOP,
have
yeah,
an update on the operations of the.
but how they go about dyeing the river green.
If there are years where maybe we have lower rainfall or some of these other conditions, I mean, maybe they should say, all right, this year, because of these conditions, we're not doing the dye. Right? Whereas another year you have a lot of rainfall, you know, it's not gonna last long, then, all right, let's go ahead and do it. I don't know. Or vice past those thresholds when they decide not to, or is it like, all right, it's on no matter what?
Great questions.
Great question.
Great question.
Same could be applied, same could be applied to fireworks.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
not
same
ever,
there.
like report how much rainfall we've had and it's just not much, so.
Yeah. Although we did get a lot the past couple of days, but
Right.
I don't know if that, what you're saying, I don't know if that entered into it or.
Is that something that we can put on the presentation list? Awesome.
can ask.
I think it's a great idea, Alana, because I have gotten a few calls and just even friends asking me, and I'm like, it's non-toxic, guys, don't worry.
but something we definitely want to have, something we definitely want to have for like
Say it.
January or February, because we got a presentation on it near term. It's kind of lost its luster, and then we won't have the fresh information when we are. I think it'd be natural that we would be approached or expected to have some level of,
Answers.
you know, elevated knowledge of how this goes and, you know, where we, you know, what do we know about it? Because I think anecdotally, a lot of us have experience with it, just either from living here or through our day-to-days. But yeah, that's something we could probably put, you know, way out and just kind of get on the water parts. Use of whoever's, you know, way like in January, February. I know Greater Logan got way ahead of it this year. You know, they were ready, you know, last week of February to kind of like start asking the questions. So, you know, it kind of lines up perfectly because that's around the time that the city is getting questions from others about the planning. So, and to your point about, it could be an annual case by case basis. Maybe there are conditions where they don't think that it's appropriate to do it. Maybe it's the tides, maybe it's the rainfall, maybe it's, I don't know. So it'd be, you know, better to hear from the horse's mouth. And I imagine they're probably right now going through their annual hot wash of like what worked this year, what didn't work this year, you know, what can we take away and how can we improve? So it's fair.
Great.
So we are organized, last year in June, we did a cleanup river at the 56th Street Bridge. We have a lot of agencies involved, DOT, EC, county, keep down. So we are putting something on the calendar, first, it's a Friday. Be mainly an agency related to an event. So if your agency is interested, and we're not going to open it up to the public, but why we're picking this time of year, growing up Bob lives, he goes out with his kayak, takes wildlife pictures. It's when the water level's lowest, and so it exposes a lot of things that generally not see here in access to. So it's a chance to get.
Can you send me that invite? Because if it is a
Yeah,
Friday,
we will have a flyer. They're working on a flyer and a QR
Perfect.
code, so as soon as I have this.
perfect.
Person not too long, you've got your great point.
I was gonna wait, but yes, I was gonna mention that after you're done. So you'll follow up with whatever flyers when they're done? Perfect. That's great. May 1st, everybody, stay safe.
That's 56th Street, like near Temple Terrace
Yeah,
or?
so everybody puts in and parking. And then we stage a lot of the stuff that's taken off the shoreline, we stage during this parade. So rapid response.
Does this city Temple Fairs participate?
Yes. I mean, last year we just kind of organized, it's Bob Shane just, but this, now we're gonna try to get it in.
I bet their River Watch committee would like to participate with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. It's not closed, it's just not something.
And I'll follow you with, Tampa's having the very first Green Day Earth event this year, April 19th. It's Sunday. We've never had one before. Every department is participating. It's at the Al Lopez Park. So it's the very first one, and we'll be having all kinds of tents and exhibits, things like that. It's similar to EcoFest, except there won't be any merchandise for sale. My understanding is this is all gonna be education. And they'll have a trail right there by the stormwater pond so that the kids can go around the trail and that kind of thing. And so it's gonna be a great day. It's a Sunday, so if you're interested in that, they're calling it Earth Green Day. Now, EcoFest is gonna be running simultaneously. I'm not sure, but that's located in Lutz now at that learning aid school or something like that. So the reason when we started here to do our own in Tampa is because they moved EcoFest Day. It used to be at Julian B. Lane all the way up to Lutz. And so we don't participate outside our jurisdiction. So we decided to create our own birthday event. So that's Sunday, the 19th, very first one.
I'm gonna be on the panel at that event.
Oh, you are? Okay, good. Yeah, there'll be a panel of, different regional representatives, and there's gonna be all kinds of games and things for the kids to do. It's very family friendly. Giveaways, things like that. I'll be there. I'm gonna be doing the stormwater booth. So I'll be at the stormwater booth.
Cool. Do you know what time?
I think it's 10 to 3.
10 to 3?
Yeah, and it's also on our website.
We got May 1st, Joe's event, April 19th, City Tampa Earth Spring Day.
Well, Earth Fair, but they're calling it Green Day Earth Fair. That's what they're gonna call it. It's the very first one.
I don't want to screw that up. So Al Lopez Park, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's on.
Can I add an event to the list? It's April 1st, 1 to 4 at USF. We've partnered with, it's like the hospitality and tourism club there, to do this. It's a Tampa Bay Resilience Design Challenge is what it's called. We've already had 80 students sign up to participate in this, and they're going to be developing proposals. And then reimagining like what our future looks like in Tampa Bay and how we learn to live with the water. So they'll be presenting their proposals, and then we'll have a panel of judges who are going to vote on the winning proposal. They'll get like an award and stuff. So my job is to get a bunch of people to show up and support them. And this is a great opportunity. I know we always talk about like getting young people involved in our initiatives and shepherding in the next generation of stewards. So this is a great way to do that. Let them connect with like local governments and the private sector. And so if you can attend, please do. We want people to be there and to celebrate them and their ideas. And so 1 to 4 on April 1st at USF at their Marshall Student Center.
It's just an April.
No, it's not.
Even think
I'm
about
gonna show up.
Would you be able to forward like an email invite to Diego and then he can send it out to the group?
Sure. Yeah.
Do a calendar invite. Put Kayla on there.
Perfect. I did. She's gonna be out of town. I asked her to be at one of our judges. But I'll send it to you, Diego. So,
All right. And then I do have the April, the Great Port Cleanup announcement to share. April 17th is going to be the date this year from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. The public sites are DeSoto Park, Davis Island Boat Ramp, and Gandy Park South. And then there's multiple other cleanup sites that my director, Christopher Cooley, is the lead on this event. And I will definitely share this flyer and link to Diego, and so that he could share it with all of y'all. They're always looking for sponsors, if you want to be a sponsor. And then if you have any group or teams of people that are willing to get down and dirty and actually do some cleanup work, the more the merrier. So I will definitely share that, but if y'all haven't already heard, April 17th, this year is the Great Fort Cleanup.
Now, where can they sign up? Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful to be a volunteer?
Yes, yes, Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful is the main spot.
Sign up, please.
Sign up, yes,
Yeah.
thank you. I'm not sponsored, but it's all ran through Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful as partner with the port, as well as the Propeller Club. So yes, you should be able to go on Tampa Bay Beautiful's website. And the link, I think there's a link on this flyer and a QR code, which is new this year. They came up with a QR code. So you just have to take a picture of it and then link straight to it. So I'll definitely make sure that that gets sent to Diego to get distributed out. Diego's got something.
Just a reminder that next month is the joint TAC and board meeting. It's one of the few times where you all get to hold a meeting with the 3 elected officials of the jurisdictions.
Wonderful. So be here, be square. Any other business, new business, other business? No? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all, and we will consider this meeting adjourned. Thank you, Joel. Yeah.
Hey, Joel, I don't know if you care about this, but there's a woman's I live